The recession signs are here, so we need to talk about recession-proofing our finances. Big banks are quietly cutting thousands of employees and more layoffs are coming. And just when you thought tech layoffs were over and done with, companies like LinkedIn and Qualcomm just announced yet another round of job cuts. Check this out.
Now, for a few months this year, tech employees, they could maybe relax a little. The AI hype cycle, it had given them cover from layoffs as companies raced to prove their AI propositions. Now, however, another shift is happening. LinkedIn just laid off nearly 700 employees. Qualcomm is planning to cut more than 1,200 jobs. There's also been a slew of layoffs at startups like Flexport, Stack Overflow, and Bandcamp. And it all raises the question, could more cuts be on the way? Megacap tech has been all in, of course, when it comes to investing in generative AI. There was Microsoft's deal with OpenAI, Amazon and Google, both pouring billions of dollars into Anthropic. And at most of them, rising capex to build out new data center capabilities. But as one analyst put it, the hype is here, the revenue is not. And the street is starting to notice, too, that tech spending discipline, epitomized by Zuckerberg's year of efficiency, may have been short-lived, leading some to wonder if the strong margin rebounds in 2023 will hold up.
Like I said, guys, you need to learn how to read the signs. This impending financial crash is the result of many decades of reckless policy. And no matter how much the Fed wants to just kind of wish it away with those interest rate hikes, I think we've reached a point where a financial downturn is almost inevitable. There is no real solution. You could even say that the crash is the solution with the financial mess that our government's gotten us into. But what do you guys think? They say that people feel a recession long before the government officially announced it. You gotta know how to see the signs for what they are. So first off, big banks are quietly cutting thousands of employees and more layoffs are coming. That's right, guys. Even the financial giants are feeling the pain. The largest American banks have been quietly laying off workers all year, and some of the deepest cuts are yet to come. Even as the economy has surprised forecasters with its resilience, lenders have cut headcount or announced plans to do so, with the key exception being JP Morgan Chase, the biggest and most profitable U.S. bank. Most probably pressured by the impact of higher interest rates on the mortgage business, Wall Street deal-making, and funding costs, the next 5 largest U.S. banks have cut a combined 20,000 positions so far this year. And this isn't something that they straight out announce. You really have to dig through the company filings to see how deep these cuts go. So this definitely speaks to the broader economic situation if you think about it. The moves come after a 2-year hiring boom during the C-19 pandemic, fueled by a surge in Wall Street activity. That subsided after the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates last year to cool an overheated economy, and banks found themselves suddenly overstaffed for an environment with fewer consumers looking for mortgages and fewer corporations issuing debt or buying up their competitors. Overall, a general slowing down of financial activity. What's the expert insight here? Banks are cutting costs where they can because things are really uncertain next year. Job losses in the financial industry could pressure the broader U.S. labor market in 2024. Because when they're faced with rising defaults on corporate and consumer loans, lenders could easily opt to make deeper cuts next year. Really, it's all a matter of finding levers to keep earnings from falling further and to free up more money for provisions as more loans go bad. Because trust me, you guys, there will be a lot of loans going bad, defaulting, and all of that. By the time we roll into January, we're going to hear a lot of companies talking about this. Now, of course, I'll be right there alongside you guys every step of the way. Just remember to subscribe to the channel and tap that notification bell. One financial freedom fam strong. Let's stick together, all right, you guys? Keep watching our latest updates, and let's never get tired of lighting up the like button and showing our channel some love. Our new channel. Appreciate that, you guys. I hope you guys are enjoying the content, and I hope you and your family are getting prepared. We're right at the beginning of the holiday season, and I don't know if you guys have noticed this. It's like a tradition for a lot of these sectors to lay off or even fire people just before Christmas. You guys ever notice that? Really few that I remember waited until January after spending was high. I guess this kind of practice prevents companies and banks from picking up the bill after these holidays. So yeah, back into these banking layoffs. The deepest recessions have been at Wells Fargo and Goldman Sachs, basically institutions that are wrestling with revenue declines in key businesses. They each have cut roughly 5% of their workforces so far this year. Meanwhile, after several rounds of cuts in the past year, Goldman executives, they said that they had right-sized the business and don't expect another mass layoff like the one that enacted in January. But headcount is still headed down at the New York-based bank. Last year, Goldman Sachs brought back annual performance reviews where people deemed low performers were cut. In the coming weeks, the bank will terminate around 1 or 2% of its employees. And really, another thing most mainstream media outlets don't really pick up on is how all the layoffs are actually overshadowing the hiring that they're doing. While headcount at Bank of America dipped 1.9% overall this year, the firm has hired 12,000 people so far, meaning that an even greater amount of people left their jobs. Citigroup too. The bank has already identified 7,000 job cuts linked to $600 million in repositioning charges disclosed so far this year. Meanwhile, JP Morgan has been the industry's outlier. The bank grew headcount by 5.1% this year as it expanded its branch network, invested aggressively in technology, and acquired the failed regional lender First Republic, which added about 5,000 positions. Even after its hiring spree, JP Morgan has more than 10,000 open positions. So is this a sign to buy some JP Morgan stock? Maybe, guys, just maybe. Because really, the bank appears to be the exception to the rule. JP Morgan has best navigated the surging interest rate environment of the past year, managing to attract deposits and grow revenue while smaller rivals struggled. Not to mention, it's the only one of the big six lenders whose shares have meaningfully climbed this year. Then again, there may not be much more runway for JP Morgan stock to accelerate, especially with bankruptcies surging, yet another sign of a coming recession. Bankruptcies are surging this year and on track to outstrip 2020, potentially setting up 2023 to be the worst year for corporate bankruptcies in over a decade. Last month saw 62 filings, bringing the year-to-date to 516. That is more than in all of 2021 or 2022, and nearly as much as the 518 filings in the first 3 quarters of 2020. And that was when the pandemic roiled the economy. For all of 2020, there were 639 filings, the most since 2010, right after the Great Recession, when 827 companies filed for bankruptcy protection. Basically, the September data for bankruptcy filings showed more and more companies are going bankrupt because of Fed hikes. Sure, inflation has been cooling a bit, but those Fed rate hikes also mean businesses have to pay more in borrowing costs because they owe more money on any floating interest debt that they have, not to mention on any debt that they refinance. You can see this in how bankruptcies are especially hitting companies with high levels of debt and low earnings in the consumer discretionary, healthcare, and industrial sector. Smile Direct Club, an oral care company, led the way for the third quarter's biggest bankruptcy with more than $1 billion in liabilities. Some of the other headline bankruptcies this year have included the collapse of Yellow, Bed Bath & Beyond, and Silicon Valley Bank. And according to experts, a rising wave of bankruptcies and debt defaults could risk rocking the economy towards a recession. Now, if you ask Jerome Powell, though, he's definitely hell-bent on driving our economy toward a recession. For him, inflation's still way too high, and a few months of good data are only just the beginning of what it would actually take to build confidence that inflation is moving down substantially toward our goal. This is after he acknowledged the fact that higher interest rates coming from the Fed are filtering through certain sectors of the economy, such as housing, and that there is some progress in the central bank's battle against soaring prices. He said that there are some encouraging trends on inflation over the summer, and during the last 3 to 6 months, it ran under 3%, closer to the Fed's 2% target. His best case for the economy, interest rates are likely to stay higher for longer. Remember, there's a lag to the effect of these interest rate hikes, meaning that they're probably still working their way through the economy, elevating the cost of borrowing for homes, for cars, and for business investment. But recent indicators also show that Americans are still spending, even as they navigate an environment of elevated interest rates and a surge in gas prices. I just don't know if that'll hold true come this holiday season when we all start to feel the full effect of the Fed's rate hikes. Already, big bank loan volumes are continuing to decline as deposit outflows return. On a seasonally adjusted basis, total deposits declined by $12.4 billion after 2 big weekly deposit inflows. Jerome Powell himself said that it would be painful to get to a goal of a 2% inflation. He mentioned things like below trend growth and some further softening in labor market conditions. Translation, more companies are going under and probably more layoffs for people. Probably after that, finally a recession. That's why a lot of people that I know, they have no intention of celebrating Christmas with consumption. Sure, just a small get-together with friends and loved ones, but Beyond that, really it's basically sheltering in place for a lot of people. You guys agree? Really, I'm just preparing to weather this financial storm ahead. Now speaking of, it'd be a good idea to talk about recession-proofing your finances. I mean, here's a general truth about recessions. They come and they go. There have been 13 recessions since World War II, and while each one of them felt pretty horrible, they each ended with a rebounding economy. The point is, whether another recession's right around the corner or not, we should all be ready when it does arrive, even if it's years down the road. So let's talk about some steps to recession-proof your finances. So number one, you've probably heard it a million times. Make sure you've got some savings set aside for emergencies. The general rule is to have enough money saved up in case you need to cover 3 to 6 months worth of essential expenses. These essential expenses are the bills you can't avoid, like rent or your mortgage, utilities, car payments, and other monthly must-pays. Number two, respect your debt. It's super easy for debt to pile up, a credit card bill here, a new car payment there. We often underestimate the emotional toll of too much debt. That is until we can't sleep at night thinking about how much debt we owe. So here's the deal, guys. Managing your debt can be the difference between weathering the next financial storm and struggling through it. So use this opportunity to create a plan to pay down your debts. And if you're thinking, wait, didn't you just tell us to save for emergencies? Well, you can work on both at the same time. Adjust your monthly budget by cutting out non-essential expenses like pricey memberships or subscriptions you never use. Then split the money you save in half. One part goes toward paying off your debt and the other toward your savings. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Saving while tackling debt, it's not a walk in the park, but it is doable. I've personally done it. And in case of a worst case scenario, create a backup plan. Consider what you do if your finances start to feel a little bit too tight during the next recession. For instance, if you live alone, would you take on a roommate? Pick up a side gig, side hustle, or both? You might never have to put your backup plan into action, but it's good to have some ideas in your back pocket just in case. And fourth, last is something not a lot of financial channels talk about, taking care of your wheels. Even though new car prices are dropping, interest rates are still higher than they've been in a while, so treat your car as if you plan to keep it for another decade. That means not skimping on repairs or delaying maintenance. This is an aspect of life where spending a little bit of money today could actually save you big bucks down the road. And in case you do need a new car, consider buying used. While used car prices skyrocketed during the pandemic, they're finally starting to come back down. According to Car and Driver, experts expect used car prices to drop by 10 to 20% this year. Really? Guys, the key to recession-proofing your money situation is to stay calm. Even though recessions come and go, some folks act like each one is the end of the world. They panic, they start selling off their investments, but by staying the course, you can definitely see some great stocks at bargain prices. You might not be thrilled at the moment, but you'll appreciate it when the recession passes and your portfolio value starts to rise. Regardless of when the next recession hits, there's no harm in preparing for it. Of course, we'll be right by your side every step of the way. One financial freedom fam, right guys?